Oh, hello. I was trying to get a new thing. Welcome to the Trappist Transfer, an actual play podcast using the Eclipse Phase RPG system, set in a fictional sci-fi future of Earth and humankind. I'm Will Blackmore, and I'll be your game master, weaving a web of intrigue for tonight's players. Ashley and Bradley, my left, playing Truth Seeker. Mark Jondal, playing Comms 3. Evie, playing Caster. And Connor Crumley, playing Penelope Gray. Yeah. Today is, just to kind of date this if people are watching it in the future, like I know I will, day after Christmas, so happy holiday season in whatever form fits for you, even if it's like a bitter, no form whatsoever, screw it, like just past the solstice, I also feel that. So cheers to Chosen Family and those in the room. Whether you got to spend it with people or not, either way, for a while.
Cheers.
To those watching, hopefully you enjoyed. Hopefully you've had a good time one way or another. We had a fun, a few of us had a little get-together last night, actually a couple in this room. We're hoping to make like a regular thing, whether maybe we'll, tape them at some point. But sort of a storytelling tradition, I guess kind of what we're doing now. But, less group storytelling perhaps and more individuals. And so, yeah.
I read a book of Victorian ghost stories for Christmas.
So, like,
that is perfect.
Where were you last night?
Sleeping.
Oh, well, I'm a little jealous of
valid.
that.
That's
Don't
where
lie.
I was.
Fair enough. But honestly, like the sort of thoughts of different traditions and how cultures come together for the creation of these holidays have got me thinking about something I want to do in game. But something in particular that I think about from an astronomy perspective, and I talk about with my classes often, is that, almost invariably, any culture that has tracked the stars, which is pretty much every single culture in one form or another, has come up with a solstice kind of celebration, right? Like now we've kind of like mashed it together and we've got sort of, Christmas, Hanukkah, various elements. There are still other, even more so that I'm not as well versed perhaps as I should be around the world, but of these solstice celebrations. And to me, that makes a lot of sense, right? I'm perhaps oversimplifying it, but it is depending on where you are, like winter solstice, etc., like the longest night of the year. It is, in between, when we've harvested and when new life is coming back, the sun is starting to come back into the sky more often. Perhaps you've been cooped up with people you tolerate for longer than you should. Who knows? But it's like,
why are you looking at me?
Here's a time. Because you're trying to make great eye contact simultaneously. So it makes sense to like put a bunch of lights to fight the dark, right? To bring in a level of like cheer and celebrate opulence. To like know that we've made it sort of past the hump as we're heading through. And I mean that's just one example of different holidays that are often similar amongst a lot of different cultures. And if you know of any particular ones, feel free to speak up. Go for it.
The Icelandic Yule. I don't know. It's kind of like a boogeyman kind of thing. It's the Yule cat. Apparently, it's a gigantic cat that will eat you if you're not wearing new clothes on Christmas
Yes,
Eve.
I read about that this year.
It's super judgy and terrifying.
Yeah.
Because I've always thought that
classist.
like
Yeah.
What if you can't afford new fucking clothes?
No. Iceland, you were making your own clothes with your family. So, like, it was more to get lazy people going.
But Jill's behind schedule and we're gonna close.
Just to ensure
Jill,
that, like, you are clothed and taken
Yeah.
care of and you're not going to freeze to death.
right.
My favorite thing that I learned about was Mary Lwyd, who is a Welsh horse ghost that
Yes!
has
Wait. Horse ghost?
Oh my
Horse
god, it's
ghost.
amazing. Look up pictures.
So, like, the Welsh people
Google horse
were known to be poets, and arguably, I guess, still are.
Arguably.
What? Yes. It's just
They
a
don't know how
yes.
they identify.
I don't.
Put them in a box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not putting anybody in a box.
I regularly go to, like, the thing down at TC O'Leary's where they do
I
poetry
regularly
and
go to
stuff.
Wales. And
I wish.
I know, right?
But so this horse ghost, Mary Lwyd, comes to your door, and you have to rhyme back and forth about why Mary Lwyd cannot come in your door, and if you fail, comes in and drinks all your beer.
Yeah.
Those are some serious consequences.
Also, like,
because it's
So people like
whales.
actually
Yeah,
dress
no,
up in like horse
they-
skulls
Yeah.
and do this. to
Yes.
neighbors,
Yeah.
right?
No,
Yeah.
you actually.
so
do
it's like this super
It's
tall thing where like the horse skull sits on top,
Yeah.
and then
like
it's
horse head.
yeah, and then it's
fully
like
have an image
You
of
have,
this.
you
Yes.
have to do quite a
like, you're
performance, so it's so like you deserve
Yeah.
to win and get the beer because you went to the trouble to do that.
And everyone gets
So cosplay.
I like the
Yes.
it's the commitment to the bit.
Yeah. Nice.
and everyone ends up getting a
horse joke?
beer and hanging out.
I thought that was pretty good.
But yeah.
You want coffee?
Coffee time.
Eddie wants
That is
coffee.
kind of fantastic.
Well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the default. He knows to bring me coffee.
stuck my finger in my eye, and now it feels weird.
I feel
Your
that.
finger? Your
Are you?
My
both?
eyeball.
Is this a shocking?
Oh,
upset for
my
you?
eye! I'm not supposed
Well,
to get
it was
fingers
more
in
like
it.
I just
It just
rubbed.
keeps hurting when I do this, Doc. What should I do? Stop doing that.
It's more like I rubbed it, and then it was upset. Just like once.
One,
Just
is it one of
because-
those moments where like you touched a jalapeno 4 hours ago and you're just
Maybe,
not surprised?
yeah, but I didn't touch a jalapeno. I mean,
you know
maybe my eyeballs are allergic to cheese. I gotta figure that out.
You're just that hot, Evie.
I love you all.
this one eyeball.
With this shockingly strong opener that we've got to this game, hey everybody. Why I also want to think about this is as a little bit of a challenge for everybody. What kind of holidays have made it through to current times in the world that we've created and in humanity? Possibly what new ones are even going to be created post this destruction, right, of Earth. But what ones perhaps has humanity brought with them, right? Because now we're have gone through a radical pruning of the population multiple times now. This is the second version of that, at least, right? So we're down to 2 million-ish people. But what you assume that there's going to be a somewhat random distribution, most likely, of cultures and things that have survived in different traditions. But there's certainly, I imagine, more of a focus on a world culture now. But there's still going to be a lot of heritage, a lot of elements. I imagine Penelope's got some memory of was more like British background. I forget exactly where Penelope comes from. If you had outlined
British
that.
Welsh.
Yeah.
That sounded a lot like the fox hunting.
Yeah.
Oh, it's back to Welsh. You're like,
Can we say that
poems.
Christmas is warped into basically a weird version of Secret Santa where you literally draw names out of a hat and then the person you get, you have to break into their house and leave them presents at some point?
What?
I like the way you're thinking.
I'm going to say that's a
really
huge violation of personal privacy.
Yeah,
I
gonna
know,
say,
right?
you would
I
have
just
to-
feel like it'd
Hey,
be weird.
hey, privacy could be an outdated concept.
Yeah, privacy.
Honestly, I feel like privacy would
It's
be
the opposite.
Yeah,
I feel like double down on it.
Double
now
down on
because
privacy.
It is, personally.
but I also feel
Not
like
the truth seeker.
because we're sort of post scarcity, but not really, any opportunity to have a day off and celebrate with your people is going to be so going back to older traditions of Christian fasting days and feasting days, or Buddhist traditions of same thing, fasting days and feasting days, and Hindu tradition of fasting days and feast. So
Hey, similarities again. Look.
we're just gonna celebrate fucking all of it all the time, and it just becomes this cycle where you can participate or not depending on your specific religiously held beliefs if you have them, but most people are going to be oh yeah, it's Diwali, we're celebrating. Oh, it's I need another holiday.
Kwanzaa?
Yule.
Kwanzaa.
Yeah.
We're celebrating. It's
Saturnalia.
Saturnalia. We're
We're in
celebrating
right now.
Yeah.
I feel like you would also still probably have people, given what it's like to be away from, terra firma, to hold on to those patterns because
Yeah.
they're ingrained even in our biology, how we developed as meat sacks to be. So you would still have solstice and equinox and things like that, regardless of the actual.
I mean, versions of that have surpassed like thousands of years in human history too. So that's kind of
that also brings up a really interesting point, though. Like, and that but it's because we've been on a rock that these things are linked to the Earth's position around the sun and when different things are happening, right? So not only is Earth not really a thing as much anymore, the element.
Not really.
Of
I feel like it's not.
yeah, well, it's the rock's still there.
It's still a rock
that's
around
right.
the sun.
Well, let me make a
It's
proposal.
just a sterilized rock.
Let me make a proposal that we set up the hold specifically to mimic the experience of a calendar year on Earth, in order to keep a sense of that for the mental health of
We can do that, but I also envision that, because all of our food and everything is going to have to be grown with the season. We're going to have to mimic seasons in the real.
You can do it so much faster with hydroponics, though.
That's fair.
Mm-hmm. So something that we'll get back into this a little bit, but like last time we discussed, as you were like heading into the ship and you were seeing those like growing stalks of sort of like of fractal platforms coming out of the edge of the cylinder, the barrel, towards the sort of light strip that is like the fusion channel in the center, right? Is that there are different growing platforms because it's like different temperate zones as you get further away or closer towards that central light. Microclimates, absolutely. And so much so actually that there is more like jungle-like rainforest environments towards the top, and because of the gravitational flow and rotation, whatnot, right? You see cloud structures and mist things kind of like drifting down along the spiral. So like creating this sort of water system.
Right. I also feel like, regardless, like, I don't really want to be in the meat suit at any given moment, but I still got to think about how it's going to react because I need it to do what I need it to do.
You get another tool.
Right, exactly. And the health of the meat sack directly ties into still having that.
The health of this meat sack requires calories and an appropriate level
vitamin
of
D.
nutrition.
Well, and so exactly that, just that it is biologically needed, like, to have oxygen and certain.
I like how you sound bitter about it. It's biologically required to have oxygen and some water.
I tried not to, but they fucking made me.
Right.
I know some queens that tried to not eat and they got real bitter about it. So.
I feel like they were probably bitter beforehand.
Yeah, but then when they realized that they couldn't live on IV nutrition alone.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole nother. I'm sorry, y'all. That's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, but I want to have it, just not now.
Yeah. We'll save it for one of our book club meetings.
Right.
See how that goes. Gonna close the door behind me a little bit. Cool. So back to little bits here. So I like this because that was my idea. Was wondering how humanity is going to continue tracking time, right? And I reserve the right to tweak with things once we do like time jumps and who knows what, right? I have ideas, but I absolutely agree in the sense that we've already focused a lot on normalcy to keep a lot of the human psyche kind of present, right? Because there is going to be elements of, as you've already noticed, non-normalcy. Yeah. So like anything you can hold on to particular patterns, things that have been like biologically ingrained to us, psychologically ingrained into us, right? Like it will get weird if you don't have seasons. Like I know my father went to Ecuador for a period of time, like a few years. And one of the things that like stuck for him was like it bothered him that there were no seasons, right? Like there were variations that people locally would probably refer to as seasons, but it's what you're raised in. It made more sense. Yeah. But for him, it was like I can't handle it. Right. It was like he needed more variation. And so I imagine there's going to be that same sense in like needing some level of variation, whether we understand it or not. So keep calling the calendar what it is until something changes and shifts. I may
like
tweak
say
it over
that
time.
We fixed it though, so it's not like off and we have a stupid leap day. Can we have done something to our calendars? Stupid.
Well, it will have an actual solar calendar.
Yeah.
Okay,
so
I'm cool with that. I don't want like some weird Pope's calendar that's just like fucking everybody.
We've had many.
We tighten that up at some point.
So I really like the idea of having the interior of the hold as our virtual space follow the actual like seasonal axial rotation of the Earth and that turn and like how that works in terms of light and stuff.
Okay.
Because if you're in meat space on the ship, like you can do day and night. Like seasons are going to be really hard. You can do elevation.
So, question about how we do that in the hold then. So, as it stands, it's not like there's a star in the hold, right? Like, because remember, we're on the inside of a sphere.
Yeah.
So it's not like there's space heading out. It is very much like feeling like an enclosed environment. There's light, but it's not like necessarily daylight and day and night. Although there could be cycles.
It would be like weather.
Yeah, and I feel like we would honestly because so many people are spending so much of this journey in the hold that we would program day and night cycles, seasonal cycles, like because otherwise.
So we have outdoor like park spaces.
Well, and I feel like you would
absolutely.
have like spatial overlays because what I also envision is like not only are they going to want that, but you're going to have one person being like, great, can I have a perfectly mild Pacific Northwest all the time rainies? That's me. By the way, in case you were confused. Rainies
right
all the
with that.
time, like
Where
not
it's like
too
up
hot,
against the
not too cold. Like, I don't really need to see any balls of fire. Like, we're just not, that's not necessary.
Anymore, you're like, I'm not fighting this.
Yeah.
I think that's valid, but not.
It's just simply that like you would have that and then someone else would be like, cool, I want Hawaii all the time.
It's like default. Like there's a default that's like a consensual thing, and you can
For, like shared space.
Yeah, like the common space, like the consensual, the reference point. You can go off. You can still go off and request your own thing, but like if you interact with other people. Like a lot of that would happen in the consensual space, like
and so what I'm
whether you can have a modded existence or a non-modded existence.
What I'm saying is that you would have groups of people consenting to a single space, and that would have sort of like meshed over. Does this make sense to anyone else?
Kiosks. Yeah, they're like separate areas.
Like not to bring up
Weather kiosks.
Second Life again, but like, you know, in Second Life, right, when you go to other areas, it can be completely different. Like you can literally like jump from like, oh, I'm in a steampunk animal land, like and it's night all the time because it's dirty and gritty. And then I jump to like, you know, and that's because that space has agreed to be that space.
So steampunk.
But I still feel like you can have the hold have seasonal weather where like you can live in Hawaii in the hold all the time, but then you can still go
in this quadrant.
You can go to nighttime Animal Farm and be like, yes,
When you
this
say
is
Animal Farm, I get.
that Animal Farm.
That was like a pun.
Excuse me.
Dystopian.
But I feel like that would be more like entering a building rather than being in a communal space. Or like a larger public communal space.
I guess I'm just trying to understand how the hold would be sectioned out, like as far as communal space goes. Like, how would it look, and how would
radically different than what it currently is, anyway. So,
yeah,
I'm open to ideas. I have particular ones, but
Cool.
So I would agree like that. There's this normalcy right now. All of those like mods are suspended for processing purposes, right? Like not like. No one gets their own weather.
Up into like maybe almost no weather for the moment.
I think is like
way
the resolution of the hold you notice dropped radically, right? And has been dropping. Like it hasn't like you as I kind of mentioned last time, you didn't even notice until you're out in meat space again. And you went, oh. Like it already is like the whole is not a perfect representation of reality. It is pretty dang good. Don't get me wrong, but it is not. You notice a pixel difference as it were. When in reality you're like, oh, the Planck constant or the Planck length is the pixel here, right? It's like, okay.
Like the hold right now is all like gray silver skies because super easy to render.
Yeah, it is. Like,
right.
I'm trying to play Skyrim on my 1995.
I also wouldn't be surprised
machine.
if it just went to your like classic
Crank that shit
late
down.
90s like black with a green grid,
Yeah.
like oh Whoop, whoop. We ran out.
The whole is now a text-based game.
Yeah. I'd be super good
It's
at
all
that.
just a teletype printout.
Oh God, yeah.
No cello paper.
So at our short story last night, I got halfway through because I wanted to break it up a little bit, but I was reading Asimov's The Last Question. Have you read that one?
I don't think so.
We'll talk. But it's like it's very much like projection into the future, right? And it's a really cool conversation about entropy. But at one point, they're like the first like timeline they start off in is like 2061, right? Like 100 years after Asimov even wrote it. And they're dealing with a computer, and it's printing out its answers like until it like the teletype like and I'm like, oh, that's what the future is like. You know, those moments of like a nicely conservative guess on what computers are going to be like in the future. So,
but that's all they had to think about for computers was like, oh, it's punch cards and teletype. Like,
yeah, well, I mean, you look at original Star Trek, right? Where like everything was like dongles, right? That's anything digital.
What if the GUI, the graphic user interface, was never developed? Like something, some other kind of like representation would have taken its place.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know. I could live in DOS space.
DOS space. That's a whole
I
other level we'll
definitely
talk about later. Okay, so I like this. I want to continue. We'll continue some talks to sort of like the customization of a hold a little bit later, but I want to get back to like any other holidays you think might be interesting to come up with, and then kind of go from there. So we've got like the sort of opulence element of the celebration of that piece. What do you think?
Well, so, I mean, depending, the stack technology is still very young, but I would highly anticipate that you would have alternative versions of birthdays. I mean, if you consider these holidays, I don't know if this is like okay.
It's a cultural piece. That's what I'm looking for.
Cool,
Is like kind of fleshing out this cultural element. What marks time for people?
Sure, that you would have birthdays that were like when you were first stacked, or like when, like, who knows, maybe in some families it's a choice, kind of like what do they call it, what do the religious people call it when you choose the gods?
Like when trans people get rebirth days?
Is that a thing?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Sorry, I'm really like
birthdays. Like,
that's I've not heard that before. Like,
so
I'm very much not part of that community.
I don't know.
For a number of different reasons.
Cults, though, still a thing.
But also,
you're
like,
fine.
In Confucian Taoist culture, everyone turns the same age on the same day.
Really?
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, everyone has the same birthday.
I would love to have a group of people that do that.
Maybe that is since time is not a thing necessarily, and it's like when do you say where these things are marked, like that humanity does that, right? Like there is one day a year or week a year that is a celebration of birth and rebirth and
like
time.
Everybody's birthday.
I love this so much. Like when we like burned everything to the ground and we started over.
Like the day that the people reset our society is like we celebrate humanity's birthday.
Maybe we just got rid of like singular birthdays and that's the only birthday.
Yeah, humanity is the only age that matters.
Maybe birthday is like Earth Day. Not actually.
Still too soon to call it that, though.
No. Now there's gonna be like a Death Day celebration, like every year.
That's fucking awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so
Birthday
into
Earth
this.
Day?
Birthday Earth Day. Well, we'll come up with a better name. But
I just meant like because I was kind of thinking of a similar thing. Like, what if the entire world like celebrated the Earth and it was like this like kind of how we like came together? But that's like celebrating the Earth. Yeah, that's cool.
Well, no, like I see it as like I don't want to call it Unification Day because that's a thing in so many other pieces and it sounds sketchy. But like a level of like us coming together, like I do like a rebirth day as sort of like a concept, whether we want to brand it that or
We
not.
could also like rebrand it. Like if we wanted to like go full cyberpunk, we could just rebrand it Reset Day too. Like Reboot Day.
I like that.
Yeah.
Reboot, reset.
You want to go reboot or reset?
Reset.
I feel like it could be called both depending on what part of like Earth we're chilling around.
Could it be that one of the like all of those are within the circle of the day and it depends on the right? So it depends. It just depends on the group that's saying it. The same way that like I have friends who only say Squished Out Day.
Cool.
They don't call it birthday.
Squished out.
They call it Happy Squished Out Day.
Gross.
I like to congratulate people on riding the wet rock vehicle one more time around the sun, but now it's no longer a measurement for this world, so...
I have friends who
revolution.
call it gaseous oxygen introduction anniversary.
Oh, can you
Spirit formation.
what's the short
anniversary.
version?
There's no short version
Oh.
of that.
Cracking the
Fucking
3D printer.
Penelope.
No, this is like in real life.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah, I like that. That all of the like reset, redo, rebirth, like it's sort of like known as like this
Yeah.
like this time of do overs, mulligan, like whatever. It's like everybody got knows, but it is also like a birth of humanity, right? Especially now that mortality is sort of tied to that element or lack of mortality, right? And immortality is tied to some of that element and that time
I feel
for
like we're
us
all
too.
feeling our mortality pretty hard right
What
now.
if it's also the
If our
the
shit blows
new?
up, we are all gone.
Then I've done this right.
What if it's the new Year too?
What's that?
What if we lump it into New Year's as well?
Yeah, that's everybody's birthday is New Year.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Exactly. No, I agree. It's like it's a kind of like
entire world
we've lumped
rebirths
things
together.
together because now there also, especially is like honestly, like January 1st is an arbitrary day for New Year's. April 1st was the New Year's for a really long time.
Yeah.
All right, before they pushed it back, right about the time that we America's adjusted our calendar right to match up with Gregorian.
Don't even start
Still
with
weird
that.
that we keep talking about it. Additionally, since we are no longer tied to a solar-based clock, actually, I would say, I think we just get rid of leap years. Period.
Yeah, of course.
Because we don't need it, right?
We got rid of that like 10 minutes ago.
Well, no. What I was meaning, like, well, you were talking about adjusting calendar and stuff, right? And things like, as in, like, making it more accurate or whatever. I was thinking just like we don't need an adjustment anymore because there's no like we're not adjusting for a real physical environment anymore, right?
Yeah, that's what
solid.
we
Just
were
do
saying.
that. Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
just like
Okay, fine.
We made like we just based made our society went to a sun calendar was what Connor was saying, basically. Like a solar based calendar.
Or
Instead of-
yeah,
We've always sort of been solar based. We just weren't very accurate
Sort of
with it.
been, yeah. Inaccurate one.
inaccurate triangulated solar-based calendar.
Cool. I dig it. I also want to say that there is so actually this looped in well with
Man,
what I
my
was thinking.
sundial I brought with me doesn't work. I just realized.
Why would you bring a sundial with you?
It's the middle of winter, friend.
No, in the virtual
In
world.
the virtual
God.
world.
Doesn't make it any better.
Synchronous.
It's the middle of winter and somewhere in the virtual world.
Everyone is still like, why would you bring a sundial?
Sundial on a ship. Do you remember Earth's history? Shit, nobody
I
understands.
feel like the artist would wear one though as a watch. A sundial.
Yeah.
The artist has a lot of anachronistic accoutrement.
There is also some like when the sundial pops up in the virtual, right? There is a tiny little sun that is like orbiting
Right,
it that actually
right.
makes
Okay,
it is
but
the accurate time.
I feel like that's
amazing.
I feel like we need to uncode that because that might be a trigger. I'm just saying. Get that.
Well, it's up to the artist to see how they're gonna trigger people. It's art.
Art is
Abby.
supposed to trigger
Valid.
It's
people.
art.
Well, why? What makes you think the artist doesn't want to trigger people?
Oh, I didn't say that
Yeah.
that they didn't. Yeah.
I'm gonna fully make you like write up this NBC at some time, Mark.
I'm working
So we're gonna move on from here pretty shortly, but like I would love to have that like question of other like additional things to celebrate or holidays like percolate around. If you have some ideas in the future, come up with them for sure. Like I imagine right now, I think it's a little too soon to think about what we might do in terms of marking the end of Earth, perhaps, right? But I think that would be something else unique. That how humanity tackles that, whatever's left of it in the future, since all of you seem hellbent on murdering them. At least a few. I don't know. Every time we talk about we obviously need to delete everybody. I'm like,
I'm not going to deny it.
I'm not
gonna do
hell-bent
anything but
on
speak.
murdering anybody. I just think that perhaps it might be more efficient to delete
well,
consciousness
that
we
seems to be a
don't
great
need.
segue to get us back to
What if
story
we-
proper.
Right. Let's kill some people.
What if we asked people, like we were initially wanting to, right? Like, hey, who wants to delete themselves? And whoever volunteers, it's like reverse psychology gets to stay because you guys were like, all the good people get deleted. And then we delete everybody else that didn't volunteer.
That sounds like a great truthy thing
Wow,
to
you're
do.
super
Do I have to roll
dark.
for that one?
Yeah.
That was lying. Is that lying? I didn't actually lie. That was just an idea about lying.
You need to roll for that one.
You're in character right now.
Oh no.
No take backsies. No, hold on.
Okay.
We're not in that
I was
mode.
like, please don't make me roll to lie. I don't know what happens to me if I fail.
Because
Hey,
you can't, the way you've set your character up, actually.
I actually
and
have to make a will check against myself if I try to lie.
Right.
Against yourself? That is confusing.
Yeah, that's what it said.
Thanks, Bill.
Pursuing this action requires a will check.
We'll talk about that. At any rate, to kind of get us back into storytelling mode, and this is all relevant. So where we left off is y'all have been tasked by Pollux to head into the real because Pollux is just so overwhelmed trying to just manage the dumpster fire that the hold is currently.
It only knows that terminology because of
2019
Caster.
And Comms 3 at this point.
Yeah.
Comms 3 is very well versed
got a lot.
in human terminology. And so, that's actually the like loading signal error sign is just a dumpster fire happening in the background. Be like,
So-
sorry, system
Yes.
resources are being taken up elsewhere. Thanks, Bill.
How much processing power is being wasted on the dumpster fire
It's an
emoji?
It's real low.
It's incredibly
an
like
8-bit.
I was
8-bit,
joking.
yeah.
I was joking.
Yeah, it's a lo-fi dumpster fire.
Yeah, like
It's a highly stylized,
I like how
very
you all jump to
efficient.
defend the dumpster.
well, listen, there
Like,
used
whoa.
to be these little like
Human nature.
loading, these great
8
little
bits in
loading icons, especially on PlayStation JRPGs, but also Sega Saturn, and they'd be like 8 to 16 bits, and they were
And everybody knew what they were.
yeah, and they were fun and they were detailed and like
Can we get a stylized? Can we some artist we know or else like make a stylized dumpster fire that we maybe use as our like standby signal or for our signal on it?
There's a person that
Amazing.
keeps showing up on my Tumblr that only does 2 to 3 color 8-bit animations, so we could reach out to them.
I also want to say, Mark, you seem excited and ready to do that. Also,
Yeah.
I like outsourcing.
I like this idea better.
Cool. Hey, down. I mean, I say this like I have control over it, but maybe
I'll play around with some. I'll play
Looking in the
around with
closet.
some ideas. Like
Cool.
Yeah.
So, dumpster fire is happening inside the hold, and Pollux sent you all out into the real world to help navigate and kind of act as eyes and ears, and really you're not communicating with Pollux very well. Like, you occasionally get through, but it's like something between the interface between the virtual and the real is just like Pollux is handling what Pollux can handle.
If you would like to leave a message, please do so at the tone.
Right.
Sorry, message box full.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Message box full.
Oh no!
So no space bar.
Call again later. Bye.
Oh God. So y'all got sleeved into meat suits for the first time since the journey came about. You are feeling some extra level of re-sleeving sickness during this process because you are still 2. One of you remembers very clearly what it's like to be in a meat suit because it hasn't been that long for part of you. Albeit this is a different meat suit. Strange. The OG version of you
a little weight after I
is
left, I
feeling.
I'm just kidding.
Actually, no. I mean that's kind of explaining some of the.
Why is this body weird? Like it's smaller.
There's like some sort of dysmorphia element to it, like not like in any judging sense, but in a way of like I remember this being different than this, and I remember my virtual body being this versus that, and there's 2 of you kind of in it and warring, some feeling more comfortable with part of it and less comfortable with another part of it, and it is just like you are of 2 minds. I mean, that's part of the sort of drawback to what you're dealing with right now as well, right? And it's not easy. And all of you are in your own ways are going through something similar, right? Comms 3.
I'm a cat-sized spider, basically.
I think you're bigger than a cat.
How big is the?
I
So
remember
it's-
Roomba.
Yeah, it's bigger than Roomba, but it's a maintenance spot. So I think a cat, like say medium dog, I would say like spider size that's designed to
Dog-sized spider.
Dog size makes me
So,
love
yeah,
you.
Bigger than a bread box.
Yeah, bigger than a
Like
bread
cat
box.
size freaks me out.
Like
but
a
dog
really
size,
like bread.
yeah,
Like
that's cute.
German Shepherd.
Yeah, I would say German Shepherd is a sure. Why not?
Okay.
But like
Now I'm
you were
thinking about the thing.
Oh, thank you. So That's also a Christmas
That's
movie,
where-
unsung Christmas movie.
It's not unsung. It is very much a Christmas movie. 100%.
Okay,
Shazam
okay.
was my
So
chosen
German
Christmas
Shepherd
movie.
sized spider.
Yep. You were a smaller, scaled down version of some of those bots that were in the resleeving tower, right? That was like sort of like mechanically, like, cephalopod wise, like grabbing tubes and doing maintenance. Well, like you're a smaller version for like not that task, right?
Right.
You're tinier pieces.
But
you can interface with.
but my problem is that I don't have any reference point for like movement in real space. For me, this is all completely novel.
Yeah, and you also feel this sense of odd isolation that you've never had before, because now you are literally a being contained in a thing, as opposed to this sort of like amorphous program, right? That is just like connected, and you just recently grew in size so much that you were connected to these different elements, right? Like your body, for lack of a better term, is this sort of just vast tendril thing, right?
I
Connected
feel
to the
like I
program.
left part of my body behind when I sleep.
You have limitations now that sort of put on you in this functioning, right?
Right.
So it's awkward because of that.
Right.
Caster, what do you remember about your sleeving? Resleeving. Speaking of triggering.
There was fluids and
Fluids is my biggest problem.
There was a big
Fluids and-
Plasma, mostly.
fluids and needs.
Needs.
effluvia.
Meat sack needs.
Exact needs.
But I also like I feel like I remember Castor being just very like, oh, this is happening.
This
Oh.
again.
Yeah, like I remember this, but there was like definitely a distinct feeling of like, oh, we've avoided this for so long. And that also like during all of that, we got privy to more of Castor's like sort of really meticulous like self-care things that are set up between Castor and Pollux. So Castor's like was swaddled themselves in a blanket, so no one knows what Castor looks like except for from the neck up. Put some clothes on.
Because you were naked.
Yeah.
Don't like it. That was with K's, obviously.
Yeah,
naked.
yeah, yeah.
But also you had a bit of a flashback, like what you realized was something like maybe a memory that had been like carved out or forgotten, right? Like, through transfers or, who knows, but something that is like oddly ingrained, what's sort of referred to as like sleeve memories, right? These things that are, more than muscle memory, but something like, the residue left among synapses of the first time you were re-sleeved as one of the first people who re-sleeved, and how terrible and alone that was, and a level of shock and pain from that, but I think also more context perhaps about how better we've become with the process now, as opposed to just shoving you into the deep end of the pool to learn to swim. It's now like, it's cool, welcome back.
Well, and I think if I remember right, what I was thinking of it, that there was two things that I thought of at the time, because there was that break that happens when you're going into the sleeve. And everybody feels, the darkness, and everybody feels it a little different. For Castor, it was like endless. One of the people who feels it as endless. But in some ways that's helpful, because that makes it feel like an actual break, in between, as opposed to just like slam.
A chapter mark.
Right. Alternatively, I feel like the most profound memories that Castor probably had was also of a lot of fluids and a lot of pain in that first sleeving, like just a little memory.
A lot of fluids. Yeah. No, it wasn't like, you relived the thing, but it's like you just suddenly had this like, the Polaroid,
Oh, that happened.
photo book of, and like the sense of feeling.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got it. Cool.
And Connor, Penelope,
Penelope woke up and definitely felt the weight of her body again, and was like, oh yeah,
gravity's a thing.
This is a thing. This is me. And got quite irritated, and so went to the shower and
Sorry.
How does Penelope feel about having the arm back? I mean, I know you have I believe, like a stylized version of the arm in the hold, right?
Yeah.
Which is there, so it's never like it's anything different, and there's no shock to it. But it is still like, a moment of you forget.
Yeah.
Is it left or right arm?
Right arm?
Right arm. Okay. Like, there's one of the accurate.
No, right arm now.
Yeah. Now, cannon.
Yeah.
It's not a cannon arm, but
Can we change it next episode?
It will be a
Anybody can
cannon
call them
arm.
out.
That's right.
Upgrades. No take backs. No take backs. Oh god.
Yeah.
So your left. Oh gosh. Just get both arms and you're fine. So yeah, like what is their perspective on, or her perspective on, like her arm now, having that back, and what does that feel like?
I mean,
Be in meat space.
It's weird because Penelope can feel the weight of her body, but the arm is oddly lighter because of the materiality of it. Like, yeah, it's full of like processors and servos and metal, but it's also a lot of really lightweight ceramic. So, like, if you put it next to a regular human arm, it would weigh less.
Yeah. Well, and I imagine too, with like level of like nanotech and 3D printing, especially what your family could afford, right? It is honeycombed in a way that is reinforced the structure, but it has like a third of the actual density.
Yeah. Well, because otherwise you can't put all the other stuff that she has in there
You
in
can
there.
probably backhand people really fast with that arm.
Yeah.
Just super light, just like whoosh, and it like whistles.
It's really aristocratic.
It felt aristocratic. I was picturing it like a "How dare you!"
Yeah.
I don't know.
Good song. I saw good day.
And then, so like Penelope goes and takes her shower and has her moment of like, oh god, I'm back in my body, I have to puke, but definitely doing it in private.
Classic puking.
Yeah.
There's a
bitch.
trough right next to the bed for it, but Penelope's gonna like hold it in and like.
Yeah, no, not in view of everybody else. She needs her
Love your truth,
time.
man.
Yeah. But then when she comes out, like, she's very poised. Her, like, it looks like standard crew suit, but also not quite standard. Like, it's a little bit more. I was gonna go super anachronistic, but not. I decided not to. It's just it's cut a little bit better.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
it's made to fit Penelope.
You've got, standard crew gear, right?
Yeah.
But Penelope is obviously like, well, I set this one aside for myself.
Yeah.
And like, I augmented.
And also, like, when you saw her come out, and also anachronistically, she's got really long hair, and you're like, wait, you're in space. You can't have long hair. But when she emerges, it gets dicey. But when she gets out of the shower and has her cup of tea before she starts yelling at comms 3 to please use the one speaker on its back rather than all of the loudspeakers, like, her hair is very much up in a, like, braided do that you're like, how did she do that by herself?
You're very handy.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's not the worst. Is that a pun drink?
I need a drink.
Drinkable pun?
Yeah.
That's
I
a
mean,
drinkable
I
pun.
don't know if that was drinkable. I just needed a
got
drink
it.
after
And
that.
needs
Needs
a
a drink. Follow up.
It'll be really
Keep drinking
funny
till the
when
pain
someone
stops.
says it the third time.
Yes.
We'll come back around.
Come back around.
Yeah.
Cool. So that was us re-sleeping through that. Thanks for reliving it, but also like just putting you back in your mind space for it. You met at that point Charlie Maines, who is the current first among pilots, like the one who's awake, part of the crew, who is going to take you through like ultimately to Astrometrics to kind of like help plot the course, figure out how to avoid this solar flare.
And our reactor is overloading.
We'll get there. You stopped by there. That's where we left off. But you also met somebody. Why am I spacing on their first name? Last name Supermanian. But who is the solar physicist? Yeah, you should have it written down. Sorry, I'm spacing on it myself. But, we'll make those puns constantly. But we can call him Supermanium or Subi. I don't know.
Andine?
Andine. There it is. Thank you.
Andine.
I've got notes here somewhere, but it's not pulled
I
up.
couldn't read my own handwriting. That's why I said it so quick.
Andine? Yeah, that sounds good. So like they go by Andine, Andy, whatever. Charlie. So they were taking you through, and they're like, before we deal with the current crisis, or, well, not before, but like while dealing with all the crises, they're like, here's also this crisis, which is that the reactor is very obviously like at a capacity and is not stable. And you see the hold, right, like, which is the you were well aware of this from like stack technology, right, which has this sort of like ethereal bluish color to it, right, like that element that is sort of the ineffable human consciousness contained in this thing, right. Like there's the larger server-sized version for that, right, which is itself the primary power consumption of the ship. Is like a reddish color, like it is like something is going wrong with
like
it.
The actual
right?
metal is like heated up, right?
It's not just metal. Like there is like it's containing
the
this sort of
material.
matrix. Like yeah. So there's metal and other pieces, right? But like the sort of you imagine this sort of glass sphere, something along those lines, with the pieces running through it. Like there is like some matrix of material that is containing the energy of all of these consciousnesses, right? And the world that is created in the hold, and like that material is like that ethereal color is not bluish anymore. It's like reddish, and it's definitely like noticeably warmer
Red's
around
the danger
that.
color.
Danger color for sure.
It's universal across the world.
Red means hot.
There's no more world.
Yeah.
No, it's actually like a thing. You
red,
know, like
red means health and blue means man.
Yeah, there's a lot. All right.
Red means danger to human.
that's why I think it's weird. That's like a thing in America that our exit signs are red and not green, when in every other country they're green. Because like if you don't speak English and you see a sign that's glowing red, you wouldn't think, oh, this building's on fire. Let me go towards the glowing red sign.
Some of ours are green.
Some of them are, but I think they started
But
changing.
that's also why they show the little person running away.
That's true.
Fine.
It's fine. Run this way.
Yeah, like this is the way you go. Or don't run this way. So I don't know.
Walk and run fast.
Yeah, I guess. So either way, you roll through those, and that's kind of where we left off last time. We're like, okay, there's serious issues happening. If you remember, also the ship, as describing, kind of heading through it, you were noticing like power was on a minimum in certain areas, right? There's like sort of like flickering emergency lights. It's obvious that the system is just overloaded, and that's having an effect, a radical effect in the meat space in the real world. So yeah, basically, you are all on your way to Astrometrics, which is just a short jaunt away, where Charlie is kind of talking to you about all of the different things that they've been dealing with here, like in terms of trying to set up their, the space of the ship itself and kind of get ready and think about like options, but like basically says we need to have a council where we sit down and figure out perhaps what we're going to do just to avoid not only this flare, but what we can do about the system issues. So Legion Astrometrics. And it reminds you, Caster, obviously, oddly enough, of the sort of HUD hub, or sorry, not HUD, hub of Pollux, like in the building, right? Like where you sort of had like the war room kind of idea. So like, oh yeah, this is where some of those designs came from, right? There's some similar shared architecture. But as you all like walk into the space, you were noticing, let's say, yeah, I'd say for you make like a perception. There's a perception piece right there, I think. Perceive, that one. D&D throwbacks. What is your value that you have for it?
60.
Cool. Roll it.
Rolled an 82.
Oh, you are super focused on your friends and how amazing it is to be in here, and really notice what's happening in the room. Anybody else, it's free to roll perceive as well.
I'm down.
Okay.
I just gave you a first go at it for reasons, but
I'm doing little dances with the spider legs.
37. And my base score is 40.
nice.
13 and mine's 80.
So
Cool.
my
Well,
base
succeeded.
is 70 and I got a 6.
Nice. So you actually did really well, especially compared for yours. Because remember, you want to like roll below, but as high as you still can, and you were above 33, which actually, not that it matters in this particular case, but you just like really fast, like, and this is, I think, where like both of you happen to see it is because you're kind of like following Penelope, and Penelope starts like just pointing out as you head into the room the sort of like technological aspects of like, okay, here are like hollow emitters, and like talking about the different positions like around the room where like. Okay, and then this, like, you kind of, like, through that feed, like, you see this panel on the wall that you kind of just, like, beep, beep, beep. And, you know, at this point, you also remember back to some of your training, right? Like, you haven't been in every single room in the ship by any means, but you had, like, oh, yeah, I remember the day that we spent doing this thing, just in case, right? All of the redundancy.
Those 2 hours for that one maybe problem.
Yeah, so like that's kind of what you clicked. You're like, oh yeah, like that's what it reminded you. So you hit basically the on switch, if you will, for the room, and you're now surrounded by this like three-dimensional spatial representation of the solar system. Right, kind of like a little further back, you see towards the center of this room, and it's it's a fairly large room, but it doesn't have to be like not crazy, maybe like 20, 30 feet, 10-ish meters, 10 to 15 meters across, to use proper terminology here. Sort of like almost a sort of circle hemisphere-ish, because like, there's only you need half of it. And you feel yourself just sort of like immersed in space around the ship, right? You can kind of like zoom in, see the ship itself. You can see where you are in the solar system. You can see at least to the best updated information that you have from networks of satellites we have around the solar system at this point, feeding in information to Astrometrics. But in the very center, there's sort of like a table similar to what you had in the war room, set up for all of you to sit around, and Charlie kind of like shows you to your places. Take a sip for dramatic pause.
I sit.
Okay.
Do I have to roll for that?
I don't know, what's your sit skill?
2.
I get a plus if I
survival.
I feel like
I rolled a 9.
Yeah, it's fine.
No, I'm just kidding. I just sit. We're good, guys. Just sit.
You roll for pretentiousness?
I sit very pretentiously. Like,
Yeah, no roll
I kind
needed.
of like flare my cape back and then like
You
do
have
that
no
thing
capes.
where I like.
No capes.
Well,
You
I
get-
get,
no, you should have to
It's
roll
like-
for that
I
because
have
if you
coattails.
fail,
Oh,
you just flop over, right? It's like when you push back and like kick your feet up.
That's
Yeah.
right.
If you fail, then you're just on the floor.
oh, I never put my feet on anything. That's not proper. But you kick your coattails back and you
Ooh la
cross your
la.
legs
You all
and you
hung
sit
out?
very properly. And
Right.
Penelope just twitches an eyebrow at you.
I don't notice.
Lies. Lies.
I pretend not to notice.
She makes sure.
Pretend is a
you
type of
though?
lying, truth seeker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a
I succeeded in my will.
nice.
Penelope makes sure that you notice.
Anyway, so
Real catty.
do any of you have questions for either Charlie, the pilots in Astrometrics, or for Andine, really the solar physicist, and what you know about what's going on?
So this flare that's gonna hit us in 6 days, yeah.
At this point, closer to like 5 days.
5 days. Turning possibilities, ablation possibilities. What do you have? Can we maybe vent the reactor to give us a little bit of boost?
It's not that kind of reactor, right? It's not so much like it's propulsion. Like if we vent the material that we use for the reactor,
Then we're fucked.
Yeah, at this point, this is sort of like Charlie and Andine is sort of like pinging off of each other.
Yeah.
And because solar physicist is physicist still, all the same ways, right?
Yeah.
Like it is
Programmer.
A yeah.
I don't.
No, valid. They're like, it's a fusion reactor, right? So we've got a certain set of material, and we've basically got it magnetically confined into a toroidal shape and with a high level of density to kind of keep the reaction going, right? So like if we vent material out, all we're doing is basically getting rid of our fuel. It is not going to have enough like momentum to adjust us. We can change the course of the ship, but we have some ideas for perhaps what is the best course of action for that. But we'll get to that in a second. We think it might. There's a chance. It's risky, but there's a chance we might be able to solve some of our problems with the
Ram scoop.
with the right course correction. Yeah. But other ideas or other questions before we get into our plan. No, you're like, yeah, this is good.
No, Penelope's like, yeah, I can come up with schematics and program a RAM scoop.
Yeah. Well, we've already got a RAM scoop.
Yeah.
So for those of you who may not be in the know, It is basically a system for picking up massive material.
I would love to crunch the numbers.
You are, I hear, good at that. And in fact, like, through a good chunk of this time, Andine is kind of like been rolling around you and kind of asking questions a little bit, and which you maybe know the answers to things or not. It's like a lot of probing technical questions, and just like, how did you come about? Who are you? What is it like? And I don't know. You probably have, who knows, having inane responses, perhaps, but.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you? That's right. We're in the real world now. You can't change shape a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you have colors. You have LEDs on the outside of the robot.
I also feel like you would have accents at your disposal.
Oh yeah. Well,
Like
I mean,
those
you're
eye
just
dogs that change
And
colors.
and
you
and,
put on.
and it also, I can blast my voice through the
Yeah, but you
through
could
any
not.
speaker
Penelope,
systems that are
tells
nearby.
you to please again localize your voice to the speaker. That's
Didn't we
on
attach
you.
like what? Yeah, we attached
Yeah.
the speaker to you, and we're like only use this.
Oh, that's right. I have one speaker
You have-
on me. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah,
Because we got tired of you shouting.
through
right.
all of the loudspeaker system.
Yeah.
you've got a
There's
Bluetooth connection.
Yeah.
zero objection to you using the holo projectors, though.
Oh, true.
That's
That'd
true.
be cool.
In this room, yeah, color projectors are not just everywhere, but in this room, it's significant.
All of a sudden, we
Yeah.
see like the perfect projection of Princess Leia going, "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi," and then bending down.
you're my only hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
It's like, that's my favorite movie. Are we gonna?
Seeing the movie in here is going to be even better, but we don't really have the power for that right now. So,
Let's not go there.
so do you want to explain what a RAM scoop is?
I don't know the good physics of it, but it is a large.
But good physics.
Yeah, it's like a good Judy, but actual science.
Yeah.
All right, so
It's a large, electrically not neutral, right?
So magnetic
It's a
field.
giant net for scooping up stuff.
yeah, basically.
Hydrogen.
Yeah, mostly
Yeah.
energy and matter, but mostly like atomic sized matter.
Exotic materials.
Yeah, or hydrogen. Lots and lots of
Lots
hydrogen.
Exotic hydrogen.
Exotic hydrogen kills you real quick.
T-shirt idea?
Might have matched in there.
No, you're not.
So this
No,
means
please don't.
that the like that part of the ship has a lot of shielding,
Yeah.
because otherwise it would just scorch everything.
Yeah, so Andine at this point kind of goes into a little bit of a lecture, which for some of you, again, you're having that, oh yeah, I remember that day of training that they said we were going to do this thing, but this is not your field, right? And for you, this is new perhaps, but like there's a lot of times where you have somebody tell you something and it kind of connects to like a memory bank, your version of like, oh yeah, this is ringing a bell, but it's not like it's in your RAM all the time, right? You're just
Right.
like, oh yeah, accessing, right, that makes sense.
But if I think about something or read up on something, then I can put it together pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. You're kind of just like building your library in a way of like connections now that you have a way of making connections. So the idea always was, right, we were not going in a straight line to the Trappist solar system. You're going to be sort of like pinging from sort of like a star system to star system in that general direction. The goal was to sort of like pick up material along the way. Over the course of several hundred years, you would need new stuff, new resources, new fuel for the fusion reactor, which is very efficient, but sort of shockingly, you're using a lot more power than perhaps expected. But also, we're going to be using those star systems, like primarily, white dwarfs for various reasons, to sort of like slingshot and pick up a little bit more speed, and eventually actually start slowing yourself down on the back end, right? So using that as additional sort of tools for your journey.
Should we know why the white dwarfs as opposed to anything else?
They're pretty common.
Yeah, they're pretty common.
Okay.
They're also real pretty. So
I
they're
just
more-
wondered if there was a scientific reason why you would choose those instead of something else.
So they are compact. Also, white dwarfs typically are more stable too, because they are actually not stars that are burning fusion anymore. right? So they're like, our star will turn into a white dwarf one day, when it kicks off its outer layers and it compresses. So they glow only from leftover heat and compression, right? And they are very dense. I mean, it's something like a tablespoon would weigh as much as like an ocean liner.
So they don't get irony. Okay.
I know about this because of the atom.
Yeah.
Dwarf star alloy. It's not a real thing.
It's not. But at any rate, so it's easier to kind of like control, I think, the slingshot mechanism around it. There's still like material that you sort of like contained around it that could be like scooped up. So
Cool.
And also because I say so. There's reasons. It's going to be cool. You'll see.
Say.
But other stars will do. Right. To which that Andine segues to like, so here's the crazy idea.
We're not slingshotting around a binary star system.
No, we're going to slingshot around our star.
You mean the star that's trying to kill us?
Yep. This is why they say this is why I think it's a long shot, but possibly one of the best solutions we have. We need to change course already anyway.
Already on our way out, so
we're cutting across the inner part of the solar system.
Yeah.
Right? So like with a bit of a course correction, we could adjust and head in closer towards the star, which one would, with the proper piloting, and Charlie goes going off to the side.
Is that good?
Charlie's pretty good. But with some assistance, right? We could change course of the ship, which could avoid the main sort of like wave of the coronal mass ejection that's heading our way. We could power up as we get close to the star, which could potentially help some of our issues in terms of like our power consumption. We could get more material and more fuel now that we have, like, because we didn't plan for this many people.
Yeah.
Our system can be retrofit to possibly adjust, but we need these things, right? Charlie also starts going into this because Charlie has some background, as all of you do, sort of connected to some like various different systems. It's possible that in order to alleviate load on the system, we get more people out into the real space. You saw how, and this is the case, you saw how large the interior of the ship is. It is designed to potentially hold people. It can support, with adjustments to the nanotech growth of those spires. You saw more of them coming up. With enough material, enough power, we could start growing people, right, in terms of like cloning. Like we have that tech we were going to use when we got the Trappist. We could start downloading people into those, but it's all going to require resources.
I have a question about that. So how many people can we actively like have on the ship at once?
We'd have to crunch numbers. We're talking about physical bodies.
Yes, if we're actually making physical bodies, because right now we have over 2 million people in our hold system.
Mm-hmm.
So how many people do we need out of the hold system to make our systems run efficiently, and how many people can we actually fit in our ship?
Depends on how much power we can get going.
And resources.
Yeah.
This is like in character. Like I'm actually asking this as Trappist, as a truth seeker.
Yeah, no, this is absolutely valid. So we've just come up with this idea, and we weren't necessarily sure about all of the pieces, like in terms of like how many we can actually save. It's possible we could accommodate everyone. So with a combination of living in the virtual versus the real, we possibly, for the entire population of 2+ million at this point, have everybody accounted for. If you know your history, and we've looked up a little bit of it, some of the most high density populations on Earth were somewhere in the realm of 50,000 people per square mile. It's it's real tight. It's real tightly packed. But we can also deal with 3-dimensional space here. We've got if you remember, we've got a 5-mile long cylinder with a 1-mile radius, right? So anybody wants to do some math right now, that basically puts us at what?
Never.
You're running the numbers. Gets you upwards of 30 square miles of thank you of space in the cylinder, right? Okay. So not taking into account even a 3-dimensional adjustment for that could get us in the realm of at least a few 100,000 out into the real.
Like 300-ish thousand.
Yeah, it might be a bit tight, but like, you know, possibly up to half a million if we're really dealing with three-dimensional piece. That would pretty drastically reduce the load on the system in terms of processing power. That combined with having enough material to and fuel for running at capacity, like it's possible that could like hold the rest of humanity, at least.
Wouldn't it take more of our systems to feed that many people and to grow that much more food? And so wouldn't we still be taxing our system in a similar way? Just in a, is that just like, are we trying to spread it out? Is that the thing? So it's not just all.
Why we're trying to get energy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Energy and matter.
Raw matter.
And I just really want to know. This is all really great, but like I just really need to know what. Give me all of your worst case scenarios.
The sun fires a flare at us.
Already did that.
Yeah. Your target?
We're getting closer to the sun in order to do this.
No, but within this plan, like...
What's the worst thing that could happen?
Ramp skip breaks off.
And the
Humanity
thing is,
dies.
Listen, we're just talking about the different ideas of like... This is the idea of how we want it to fix this situation. I want to hear how it can go wrong so I can start pushing, thinking about ideas of way to like potentially figure that out should that happen. So,
I mean, we're designed for this kind of maneuver. One of the issues is there's going to be some structural issues of us turning the ship so radically at the speed that we're already going. You know, it's not the most dangerous maneuver. It's certainly within what we've expected in terms of stresses to put on the ship, but it's still, we haven't done it yet. It's a little more impactful. Right. But then it's really about getting close to a star that it seems like is more active than we expected.
It seems like somebody's aiming it at us.
Andine kind of starts muttering.
Oh, I don't like speculation. That's not really me. But if I were speculating, which I am, I think someone's aiming at us.
Speculation is like a type of future lying.
It's not a gray area for True Secret. Like I said, I don't appreciate speculation, but I am speculating in this moment. And I would like you to explain your muttering, please, Andine, because I feel like we're being shot at.
You've got like a persuasion, something though. Like,
of course.
Yeah, it's actually called persuasion in this game.
All right, that is a 55.
A 55?
And I rolled a
50.
30? Yeah, a 30.
What's the heavy question mark?
Well, I wasn't sure because like that's the 10. I got a 10 on that die, and it confused me for a second.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just a 0.
So Andine, I mean, you basically, I'm going to translate a little bit more. Like it kind of
dumb it down for me, Will.
Starts coming out, no promises. Andine can't do that very well. Andine is basically what it comes out to you is that they have studied the sun for majority of their lifetime, and they're pretty old. They're like 100-ish, right? Something in terms of like real time.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah. No one's really that much older than that, like on the larger scale of things, right? Or maybe 200-ish, but so they're like, this is like having an old friend just suddenly start acting different around you, and it's just like, this doesn't make sense to me. Like the sun is at a solar minimum. There shouldn't even be this much activity, let alone flares of this magnitude. I've known about Carrington level events, right? We have records of it happening several times, but nothing in this frequency nor intensity, let alone like, and while this is happening, Andine is like pulling up stuff and bringing out that same sort of three-dimensional image of the sun that Pollux had shown you, right, where you were watching the solar flare develop, or the prominence develop, and then start twisting, right, the flare occur, and then the coronal mass ejection fly off the sun. Like Andine like freezes it, and you see like different overlays of magnetic fields that like they're talking about, and they're like, look, this is what we've known about like how the solar magnetic field works, and it is never this compressed. Like it doesn't, like it shoots off like a wave. Like imagine like a sound coming out of a speaker, right? Like it is this like arc that spreads outwards, like a rock dropped into a pond, right? That's how these should go. but it is like something is magnetically containing this material as it's firing off. Like it should spread out more so that by the time it reaches out where we are now, it's far less. Like it should be dilute,
Not
right?
like a ray.
And not a. Yeah, this feels more like a beam practically.
So, do we know anybody, or is it within reason or within your frame of science brain that that someone could compress this energy?
I mean, you're
like, is it doable?
You're asking me to speculate about science fiction, and welcome back to the room. And it just seems far fetched.
But is it science fiction if that's what we're seeing? You just showed it to me.
It's because I see it doesn't necessarily mean I can explain it. But let me make a roll for him. Oof. They will speculate for you, to where they're like, if something was generating a contained magnetic field, right? But the power requirements for something like that would be, pardon my pun, astronomical. And it just seems like,
right place for astronomical power. I'm just saying.
I don't know of anything that can do that. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist, though. I mean, we've seen our own technology grow in leaps and bounds in the last few centuries. I can only speculate as to where it could possibly go for this, but like why somebody would think about creating something with that capability, I don't know. I don't know why.
This is why science is terrifying, Andine. I don't know how you can just live without knowing these truths. Giving me.
Science is truth. Like what?
What? No.
What?
Excuse me, and
yes, the robot in the back.
So let's look at what we do know. The frequency. So let's look at how frequent this emission could be.
We have no way of guiding these. These are 2 data points so far, but let me put it this way: a Carrington level event that we've seen maybe happens for as far back as our records go. At this point, is a bit spotty, but approximately 600 years of solar data. In terms of accurate levels of like intensity of flares, we've only been able to predict that for about 400 years. I think I might have 300 years, according to this current timeline. These things happen maybe once every 150 years or so, every 200 years. Now we've seen 2 in about 3 weeks.
Intentional. This just opens a whole nother worm of questions.
Well, how is that intentional?
I feel like somebody is obviously doing something to the sun. I don't know.
Whether or not it's intentional or not, it is repeating itself, and I think that if let's just take the spacing that we do know, like that if it's 3 weeks apart, I think our best bet is to try to slingshot back around the sun in the interim, and so the faster we can do it, the better.
But can we get around it fast enough to be away from it in 3 weeks?
We don't know, but we have to try.
So at the speed that we've built up here in the solar system, we're going pretty fast. Nowhere near our ultimate goal of about maybe a tenth the speed of light, but we're.
But how long is it going to take us to essentially make that maneuver and get around the sun and back out?
Another week?
Yeah, at this point, approximately, like, depending on the path we take, which we would skirt the edge. In a way, like, we're taking a turn that... And this is Andine speaking. I hesitate to use this terminology, but that the solar flare would never expect, right? We'll take a turn that it wouldn't expect towards the sun instead of away from it. So... At this point, we could get at the speed that we're traveling, we're going actually almost at about the speed of the solar flare right now. So it would take us approximately 6 days to get in, like towards the sun, if we almost beeline it. You want me to do some trigonometry for you?
No, I had a science question that was just me being stupid, and then I said not to ask it.
Well, we can talk at the break, which will be coming up here in a little bit.
Penelope.
It's like an Ash Layton question, not a truth seeker question.
Cool.
Penelope puts it in layman's terms is basically we're skateboarding around the sun and we're gonna put our hand on the sun to like shoot us around. It'll be
Or
fun.
like brake sliding around the sun.
Yeah.
While
love
also
this.
scooping up part of it.
Yeah. Well, also
God.
just like I need this much energy and matter.
Can we also commission someone to draw that? Because I want that picture. I want like Pollux on a skateboard.
Yeah, that sounds fine. Yeah, get on that. But it has to be 3 colors, though. Only 3
Okay,
bit.
great.
So,
Really heavy duty.
Evie, have Caster make a cognitive check. So 3 times your cog score, which is what?
45.
Okay.
Ooh. What happens when you get a 1?
That's good. That's,
Great.
It's not that's not an auto fail or anything.
But it's not an auto win either. It's not there. Is there no?
If you rolled a 0-0, then it's that's the auto succeed, and
Got it.
99 is like the auto fail, right? It's like the goal.
No, I was
Double
just
numbers
curious
are
about this system's like
Figuring it out.
like it's 20. It's critical.
Yeah,
win.
like so like a
Yeah.
oh sorry, so like a 22 is a crit and a 33 is a crit
Oh, okay,
and a
got it.
44
Double
is a
numbers.
crit,
Yeah.
and then the closer you are to your like top, like if
Sometimes
you're a
crit bats.
75, it could be a better crit. Does that make sense? Like if you get like a 55, that's better than getting like
It can also be
an
a
11.
bad crit.
Yeah, and the 99 is like that's a crit fail. That's
Yeah.
you fucked up. Like
Real bad. Real bad.
Great.
So you remember as we're talking about all of this, that Pollux mentioned, and this was I think months ago in our real time game time, right? But Pollux mentioned to you something odd about Saturn being in an unexpected place in its orbit. That happens to pop into your mind right now.
Cool.
I don't know if you do anything about it, but I'm just mentioning it to you.
how does Saturn move out of its orbit? Is that a thing
Right.
that can actually happen?
So
Odd spot.
I feel like
Unexpected location. No, not any predicted location, I think was how Pollux referenced it.
so while all this is happening, I feel very much like Caster, completely incapable of actually being part of a normal person conversation, has been like interjecting, but also like thinking to themselves and like potentially, I don't know. We don't have HUDs. Why do I talk to Pollux? Okay, being very upset.
You don't.
Right, being very upset that I can't talk to Pollux. Like Caster is on the fast train to like irritated
You can talk to
with
me.
everything. Anyways,
Penelope also has a HUD light.
oh,
She can't directly talk to Pollux right now. 'cause-
right. Well, and like the Pollux questions that I have are the kinds that, like, I keep wanting to have backdoor conversations, right? Like, sort of like, hey, could you just run this for me? Could you just do this?
Dumpster fire pops up.
You're
Right,
used
right.
to having the off-board processing
Yeah.
access.
So
Alexa.
what Caster is saying basically comes out in this way that is not directed at anyone, but also like not like not directed. Anyways,
To the room.
Caster's
Correct.
wonderful with words.
right. Oh, we're the best. But basically, sort of like, well, what? But I know no one wants to talk about the bad things, but like, what about the sun? And like, what about the consciousnesses? Like, I need numbers, and I need definitives, and I need like we have to make decisions.
We're talking about that right now.
I understand that, but like, get to the meat of it. Like, we are literally, and like, there's nothing there. Pollux, all right, Caster just, gestures and is like, all right, no can hold, no HUD, no nothing. Great. Well, there's a ticking clock. And so we should get started.
Yeah, I mean, maneuvers would need to start within The hour.
The sooner the better. The less G forces we'd have to stress the ship on if
Yeah.
that's the case.
Otherwise, we're gonna crack ourselves in half, and I am
Like an egg.
not gonna have that happen.
You might have to.
I just imagined you on the outside of the ship being like, this isn't happening.
Yeah, materials engineer. Like, nope. This is
It's gonna wrap us in a giant snuggie.
I mean, maybe like opposing solar flares to alleviate some twisting forces, but
It's less the twisting force I'm worried about, or all you should be worried about.
then the whole like snap.
So, that's I think the question that we're trying to have right now, which is what this is the AM9 is saying to you is threat assessment, right? This could potentially be at least one step towards a solution for us, but it puts us directly in the threat of something that the question is like, is there some sort of directed attack at us? This seems unlikely that this event so closely spaced together and seemingly targeted at us would just be random chance.
Just from a statistics perspective, like, it doesn't seem random.
Yeah, it's stupid and probable. Is how Antine puts it.
Yeah,
But we have like no idea if it was directed.
whether it's directed or not, if we make the slingshot around the sun, we will get away faster than anything else.
But this is with the
So
presumption that it actually takes 3 weeks between. Like, what if they can do it quicker than we're thinking?
then we're
Or what if it happens again
Well,
quicker
we're,
than we're thinking?
then we're
Then
like
we're all
screwed
dead.
either
We're
way,
fucked, yeah,
right?
we're fucked, yeah.
So I guess
This is our only chance.
dead
Yes.
later,
Let's take it
or
This is the only option that we
dead
have other
now.
than
Dead
just
with our
waiting for them
bootstraps
to
on.
shoot us.
Right.
yeah, dead while shooting or dead while dead.
Lay down and take it, or like,
Dead while dead.
dead while dead.
No one likes being dead while dead. So they're like, okay, the closer we get to the sun, it is going to be harder to avoid any future solar projectiles, for lack of a better term, coming our way.
they're also going to have a harder time aiming because our speed is going to keep increasing. So
Yeah, but we're heading towards the muzzle of the bolt of the gun, if we're going to use that analogy.
it's actually harder to shoot somebody who's running at you than it is to.
You tell yourself that. So
The way guns work.
I mean, yes, the way guns work, the way solar flares work and technology, maybe it makes it easier.
There's no other fuel sources other than the sun.
It's either do this now or
Can we?
die of attrition later.
Yeah.
Well, I was just wondering if we could get anything we need from a gas giant.
You could get material from a gas giant for sure. It's not going to be as much, and we also left the gas giants behind us, and so that's not so good. We just left Saturn.
So really, there is no option.
Yeah, that'd be more of a U-turn.
We're just arguing about whether or not we're going to do the only thing that we
threat
can
assessment.
do.
Yeah.
Or whether you want
I
to
think
try
we've
and
all
just
kind of agreed
I don't
to
know.
do it, but we're just kind
Yeah.
of like, this is like, we're fucked. Like, what happens after?
Pull the trigger.
Well, we
Let's
agreed
enjoy the
because
ride.
we were trying to find out if there were other ways, and it became obvious that there were not. So we had to agree.
Our options are running into the solar flare or running at the sun and maybe getting hit by another solar flare. So
Buy the ticket, take the ride.
I mean,
Penelope jumped in the car and put on the seatbelt.
I like it. So, all right, if it sounds like we're deciding on a course of action, and as you're representatives of the Pollux here, so you speak with their authority. So, okay, I think we're good to go. As Charlie kind of like stands up from the table and be like, okay, so I need I need some of you to stay here in Astrometrics, to help me plot the course. I'm gonna head to the bridge. The little spider hand, like,
Yeah, exactly. Spider hand goes up.
yeah, cool. As that happens, like all of the holo projectors in the room go black. And you feel like a bit of a lurch as like it feels like the spin that you've been under is like suddenly adjusted. And
Big lurch, like
big lurch.
Like you lose your meat sack
Y'all are
footing.
thrown a bit.
Great.
I would say everybody make a reflex check.
Do I have magnetics?
Yes. You still make a reflex check.
What's reflex?
REF.
It's 15, or your reflex is your aptitude, so it's times 3.
plus 15.
Well, apparently I forgot how to engage the magnetics and bounced off a wall.
Nice. No damage for you. I would just say, like, you maybe, like, rolled a little bit, like, unexpectedly.
Penelope looks graceful on the outside, but on the inside, she's just, like, flailing.
Also, y'all are still getting used to the meat suits again, so...
I failed.
I rolled a 58 on a 45.
I rolled a 71 on a 45.
I rolled an 82 on a 60.
I got a 23 on a 45.
Oh, on a 30.
Oh,
Look, you stuck your seat.
Solid.
Get it, Caster.
You're like, these things have seatbelts.
Try to
Like,
catch
you're actually like clicked in. The rest of you kind of thrown from the seat. Like, it's not anything crazy, but those who didn't make their check take about 6 damage.
So, another trauma.
This is not emotional damage. This is physical. You're now in the real world.
This totally plays into
Welcome to this.
my space
Okay.
pilot stats.
So,
So this is wounds.
so that's 6, but I don't get a wound.
Yep.
Yeah.
Correct.
Because you have to pass your wound threshold to get a wound,
Yeah.
like a trauma.
Exactly. And then you've got like durability, which is like your insanity rating, right? Where like your meat suit breaks down.
And then you have a death rating, which is like, if you pass this, you fucking die.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right? I'm assuming.
Go. Yeah. No, I mean that's your meat suit no longer functions. We'll put it that way.
Yay, non-functioning meat suit.
Non-functioning meat suits. So okay, so you stuck. You got hurt. You got hurt.
Yeah.
You were buckled in. You rolled a little bit. You took some damage represented from that, but it's I take half of what I said. So instead of like just because of your
What did
suit,
you say?
I think 6. So take 3, like as wounds, damaging your robot.
I don't know what my wound threshold is.
Don't worry about it. Just write it down. You're not gonna get near it right now.
Well, I guess you're
Probably.
a robot, but our body, we were all 6 because of the type of body he gave us.
Well, I know, but if I don't know the threshold, I don't know how much to
7.
actually put on there.
No,
Your threshold is 11. You're not near it right now, anyway.
Oh,
But so you notice something. So you first off, like you hear like Charlie and Andine, who also were not as graceful, perhaps as they should have been, fell out of their seat because Charlie was standing up, ready to get tossed actually a little bit more. You hear him kind of like swearing and kind of like checking in, like heading up to that same panel that you got into. Like you feel, all of you feel, except with the exception of you, slightly like odd. Like gravity is decreased just a little bit, is what it feels like. You're a little bit lighter.
a little bouncy.
Not like significantly, but there's like something like feel like the pit of your stomach kind of sense, like where you're like kind of starting to drop is what it feels, but it's not getting worse. It's just like a little bit less than what it was. You're like, that's not good. You see this like icon pop up and you kind of have a HUD, right? You're a robot, but like you see this icon pop up that, you know, the moment you see it, you recognize it, even though you've never like driven one of these before necessarily, or you have actually as comms. You've done you've been aware of your maintenance robots before.
Right.
That signifies that this thing is disconnected from the power network and is running on battery power. And that is your body on currently.
My body is now on battery power.
You're on battery power.
Okay.
Disconnected from the sort of like induction field of the
Gotcha.
ship, which is like, you know, so it's like sort of like the induction like charging that we have, right? You're in a zone right now that would be charging you normally, but you're disconnected from it.
Cool.
And where we're gonna pause for a break here in a moment is when Charlie like comes back like with, you know, barely being able to get any information out of the panel. He says like we've had a system-wide failure where like power issues have I think perhaps gone a little too far, and we're going to take a break for a moment and be back in like 10 to 15 minutes after we take care of some biological issues of our own. Thanks for
We're not
listening. We'll be
happy
right
about
back. We're not fighting our bodies. All right, thanks for watching. We'll be back soon.